Okay, hi everyone. This is Weekly with ID number 8. And today is an absolutely gorgeous day outside. So probably most people are outside enjoying our probably last beautiful fall day in fall colors, or doing literature drops for the Democrats. So, but we're going to record this so that those of you who want to view this, we think we have some helpful information in terms of what you can do in the next few weeks. Our ballots will be coming out shortly. People are already getting notices. So, but we're going to start with Doug Fults, who is going to tell us, share some information that he got in depth from one of the county clerk election administrators. And I'll let you introduce that, Doug, and go ahead.
Okay, great. Yeah, I was just thinking back, it was before the 2018 election that we actually had Tiffany Parker from the County Clerk and Recorder's Office come out to Indivisible and give us a presentation about the election process in Colorado. And Erin Hutchins joined in that as well. She is now the county election administrator. And she gave a great talk, and the government process group followed up and did a tour at Tiffany's invitation at the clerk and recorder's office during the primary actual accounting of the election. It was the primary before the 2018 election. And that was just fascinating watching the entire process. I'm not going to go through it now. We actually came back a couple weeks later and watched how the state audit is done for the election afterwards. And I was left very impressed with the election process that we have here in Colorado. And so I'm very pleased as this election comes up to have had that experience and to know that it's something I feel like I can really trust. At the same time, I had a number of questions about what's happened in the last 2 years and how has COVID changed things. And we're hearing noise about election integrity and possible delays in the mail system, and just wondering how they were thinking about those issues and addressing them. So I just called them up, and I ended up talking with Erin for quite a while. My questions prompted her, and she just gave me all the information. And so I thought I took lots of notes, and I thought I should bring this to Indivisible and share that. So I'll just do that. So my first question was real simple. It's, do you need volunteers? And her answer is we have had an amazing turnout of people asking to volunteer at the county level this year, which is really great. And she said, we've never turned down volunteers, but with the huge level of interest, we're kind of full. So it sounded like, maybe they were at capacity for being able to handle volunteers, which I guess was a good thing. I asked her what changes have happened since 2018. And she said, well, one of the biggest changes is that they have a brand new building in Bodo that was designed specifically in mind to handle the election process, and it's larger, more spacious. It just works much better for them to run the elections. Also, they have 2 new service centers. They had ones in Bodo, Bayfield, and at the Plata Fairgrounds, but they've added 2 new service centers, one at FLC and one at the Ute Cultural Museum in Ignacio, which is really cool. And Erin was really excited about the one in the Ute Cultural Museum. Just a beautiful space, very spacious, and it's just a wonderful new service center. And the service centers, she says that they support ballot replacement, drop-off, in-person voting, fully ADA compliant. They're staffed. They can do anything they could come up with regards to the election. And I was kind of curious. It got me thinking about. I realized I voted mostly. I get my ballot in the mail and I drop it off in the drop box. But I was kind of curious if there was any, if people were still voting in person. And so I asked about that, and she said, yes, they do, but surprisingly, in Colorado, it's less than 2% of the votes now are actually in person. So people are voting by mail and by using the drop-off boxes. So I asked if, is there concern about mail delays? And she said that they haven't really seen any problems yet. No, this was a little while ago, but apparently when they sent out the ballots for the primary, they actually were like arriving the next day. There were some of them were actually, mail is working very well. They are actually, or they have, I guess by now, they plan to actually drive the ballots down to Albuquerque and drop them right into the mail system there, so that it'll get to us as quick as possible. And the mail date was yesterday. So hopefully any day now we'll be seeing the ballots. But she did say that, so of course, because if you mail your ballot back, it has to be received by November 3rd. If it comes in after November 3rd, it wouldn't be counted. And so that's got to make people nervous if there might be delays, or if you're mailing your ballot in later on in the period. See, if you're using mail, you want to mail early, but she recommends using the drop boxes. They've, in addition to the two new service centers, there's lots of drop boxes. The Click and Recorder site for La Plata County has a list of all the drop box locations. And she says, I was kind of curious how I know we like using the drop boxes, but how frequently are the drop boxes used? And she went back and she said, yeah, it was for the primary election, 75% of all ballots were dropped off in a drop box. And then so I guess that leaves 23% mailed and 2%, less than 2% in person. So that just gives you an idea of how important the drop boxes really are. So I asked a little bit about, I was kind of curious about election security aspects about, so you drop your ballot off in the drop boxes, or we send it in the mail. How are the ballots actually kept, so picked up and kept secure until they're actually counted? How do we have confidence in that? And she says that like the election counting process itself, they send out volunteers in pairs, a Republican and a Democrat, to do all the pickups for the mail and also the Dropbox pickups to deliver back to this new building in Bodo. And from there, she said, it goes into, quote, a secure room in a secure room in a secure building until they're actually brought out to be counted for the election. And so that sounded pretty cool. Also, the other aspect of, gee, if I mailed my ballot, and I'm kind of wondering if I mailed it too late, and what can I do? How do I know that my vote's going to actually count? And she said, well, you can check to see if your vote has been cast or not by looking at the Secretary of State's site, similar to the way you signed up to change your registration. You can also sign up for a new service they're running, which will send you texts or emails at key points, such as when your ballot's mailed, when it's been returned, when it's been marked as cast. They've recorded it into their system. And of course, the idea is this protects against, one person only gets one vote. If your ballot's already cast, they aren't going to count, a subsequent ballot that comes in. But the flip side of that is it's also a way to know if your vote has been counted or not, and to make sure that your vote actually does count. So if you were to, say, mail your ballot in late and you're wondering if it's actually getting there, you can go check. You can actually, the morning of November 3rd, go check. And if your vote is not marked as cast, what you can actually do is go right down to one of these service centers and just tell them, I mailed my ballot, it's not marked as cast. And they will just let you vote right there in person. You can cast your vote in person, and they will make a note that when your mail ballot comes in, just spoil it because it will have already been cast. And really that would happen anyway. If a second ballot were to come in under your name, it's going to be spoiled anyway because your vote has already been cast. But what it allows them, if you give them a heads up that you're doing this, they can make a note. And when it comes down to kind of reconciling, certifying the election, if they do have two ballots from the same person, they're going to be looking into that and trying to, understand if somebody's trying to game the system or something. Not that it would be counted, but they're still going to look into it. And this would just telling them what's happening would allow them to know it, so they can mark your subsequent ballot as well. So I found a lot of confidence in that, just knowing that I could actually with certainty know my ballot has been cast, and I could actually like switch from mail-in voting to in-person voting if I needed to make sure that my ballot was cast. I also asked, have there been changes in the processing of the vote? And this was when I got the tour and watching how they actually process the vote. They come in, they check signatures, they go through a whole series of steps before they're actually cataloged and stored in boxes until after the election for the audit. And I was kind of curious if that process had been changed. And what you said is, yes, because of COVID has presented a number of challenges. We can't just, pack these rooms with all these volunteers that are doing all these steps and have, all these people throughout the building doing this stuff. And so they've had to kind of redesign their process so that they get, social distancing. I think I saw a picture in the Herald where they had, plexiglass and masks and people separated. And that was kind of like one stage of the process. But they're also working in shifts, so they have fewer people actually processing the vote at any one time, and they work in shifts. And they even they will do one phase one day, and then do a different phase of the processing on the next day, just to kind of try and spread this out. So I was a little concerned. I mean, that sounded great, from a safety point of view, but I was kind of a little bit concerned with this aspect of, we've been told, we might have to expect that the vote's going to take a long time to count. And I've heard that in the context of mail, but I hadn't really thought about it in the context of COVID and processing under COVID conditions. And so she assured me that they think they're going to be fine with that. And the reason is because in Colorado, they're actually allowed to start actually feeding ballots into the tabulation machine starting October 19. And even before October 19, they're allowed to do the signature verification on the envelopes and do some kind of pre-processing before they actually tabulate the ballots. And also some 80% of all the ballots come in before the election day. And so they really, and we're getting ballots, this week, and I don't know what is this is the 10th. So if they're starting to see ballots the 13th or something, 6 days of pre-processing, and then starting October 19, they've got, what is that, a couple of weeks before the actual election date. And then, so they can really try and keep up with the stuff that's coming in. And then they just have the burst on the election day where the last 20% of the ballots come in. So they're expecting that they will be able to get the ballots processed just as they have before, rather quickly. In fact, she says that under the state requirements, they are to report initial results not before 7 p.m., but shortly after 7 p.m. And they're planning to do that. And they're to issue a second report at 9 p.m. and hopefully, depending on how well things go, a final report later that night. If it doesn't get done that night, it doesn't, and it'll be a little later. But it's like basically election night. We're expecting to see some results coming out. And of course, these aren't the certified results; these are just the initial counts from the counties. I should mention, step back and just say, in Colorado, elections are performed on a county by county basis, and then the results go to the state, which simply combines them and reports the combined results. So Erin was cautioning, now there are 64 counties, so things go kind of as well as how these 64 counties are able to all individually process the election results and get it back. The actual process by which the state finally certifies the results, she says she expects to stretch out to the end of November. That's normal. It's not unless the election was really close. It's not about not knowing the election results so much as it's just counting those last one county's a little out of sync, she mentioned one thing is that if ballots, if for example, a signature doesn't look right on a ballot, then they actually don't, it doesn't just get tossed. They will actually contact you and they'll try and clear the ballot. They contact you and get a new signature, have you come in and get a new signature. And apparently they're allowed up to 8 days to clear a ballot after the election. And there's some similar rules with overseas military ballots where they can actually trickle in after the actual election day. And so that's kind of also partly why the results are not final for some period after the election date. But that is expected to basically be normal, the same as any other election year. So very happy to hear all that. And that's it.
Great. That was really excellent, Doug. I have a couple of comments I wanted to make about that too. I wouldn't do it now, but if after the election, they do, the county clerks do a tour, which is, you probably did, I don't know if you did that a long time ago, Doug,
Yes.
but it is so interesting, and they show you the secure rooms. They show you, you're actually getting a tour by the volunteers who have done the signature verification, and they have a very standard group of people who have, well, they're not volunteers actually, they're paid staff, even though probably not well paid, and they have done this for years. And I think they said they verify, is it 1,200 signatures an hour or 600? And I think it was 1,200. It was amazing. I thought, and they showed how they verify it. They have a record of your signature, and even if, like if I goofed and I signed my ballot with Debbie Meyers, and normally I do Deborah Meyers, they show all these various forms so that they can, you're not going to get hung up if you didn't do it exactly the right way. And then I think there's a way where if a spouse, if they like mix up their envelopes, but they can, they check on that and can verify that. So, and the other thing that was important to me was they showed us the tabulating machine. And I said, so is that an online machine? Because that made me nervous, thinking, can somebody like Russia mess with our tabulations? It's a closed system. It's not an online system. So I thought that was important too. So anyway, they really do, and it's a neat tour. And I don't know if they do it all the time. They had one sponsored by the League of Women Voters. Was it what, about 4 months ago? And there, I think it was during the opening of the new county building. And so, yeah, so it was a great tour. And I think a celebration, the 100th anniversary of League of Women Voters or something like that. So it was a nice.
So this was a couple of years ago, but at the time, Tiffany had actually recommended that we come in during the processing of an election. And so we came in, we arranged with her to come in during the primary processing, just because you can actually see all the steps being performed. So that's kind of, I mean, it was fascinating, but it's a slightly different type of tour, I think, than just coming in when there's not an election going on.
Yeah, probably. That's great. Okay, well, thank you, Doug. So we have, I wonder if we should jump to Kathleen, because Kathleen just put on her. We were going to have Karen Pontius here from the Plata County Democrats to present. We did this earlier, and we never recorded it. Some things that people can do to help with the election in the next, we've got what, 4 weeks or less? Do we have 3 weeks now? Well, anyway, November 3rd is election day. So yeah.
24 days.
24 days. So since Kathleen is on, we're going to let her if you can just share some stuff, if you have information, a lot of people have questions about signs, what they can do. I know there's a literature drop coming up, so we'll just let you share some of that stuff if you
Sure.
can.
I want to just backtrack a moment to this, hearing Doug's wonderful review. I've already gotten 2 texts, or no, a text and an email that says my ballot went in the mail. So it's part of that system. And then last primaries, it was frequent texts doing, it's almost like, well, it went from this box to that box almost. So, yeah,
That's
it was
neat.
pretty good. And he mentioned curing ballots. You may know about the election of who we call Landslide Clyde, when he lost the election by, and I don't know the numbers. Doug, you might know the numbers. Lost it by something like 20 some votes, or between 20 and 30, or I don't remember which was
I don't
which.
have the numbers. I just remember it was so
Yeah,
small.
very slow. And so there was a cadre of Democrats who had got lists of ballots that need to be cured. And we went to homes with our cell phones. And if it was a signature issue, we took a picture of this person's signature on an official paper that we had with us. And so sent it all in. And it turns out that Clyde won because all of those ballots were cured.
Wow.
Lost by I don't remember. It was in the 20s, and then one of them was in the 40s. I don't know exactly.
I didn't realize that actually changed the outcome. That's amazing. Another case, I don't think they do that. I don't think they have that curing process.
It changed the outcome.
Yeah.
And I think that's possible anytime. I don't think it was just Clyde.
Yeah.
I don't know if any of you know John Rosapepe. He was here from out of town, and really is he was one of the major, who's our governor? I just lost it all of a sudden.
Polis.
Polis. He was a Polis field worker, and he's continued to stay in touch with people here, and he's the one that set up that cured ballot situation. The other thing I wanted to do is put in a good plug for our Secretary of State, Jenna Griswold, who's like 35 at the most. And she's been on MSNBC and somebody called her the queen of Secretary of States and voter registration and voter, suppression. And she's just remarkable. And I have a feeling that lady is going to go places. She is remarkable. She's articulate. She's just as knowledgeable and as energetic as they come. So we're so lucky to have her. And then one time when I was working with the Unitarian Universalist youth group, I took them on a tour of the voting center. And at that point, it was held in a big warehouse way up behind in Bodo Park someplace. And so many people and so many stages of, like you were talking about, the signature verification. And if the coffee cup stain got on the wrong place, and all that stuff that's just individual heavy duty labor. It was pretty interesting. So as far as what I know, I'm not on the executive committee anymore of the Dems. I'm mostly involved in Marsha Porter Norton's campaign. And so I know that there is a literature drop that the Democrats put together and funded a down the ballot flyer. And fortunately, finally, after years of multiple efforts of people going out there's a Marsha team, and there's a Obama team, and there's a whatever team, and all these people. And so finally it's been consolidated so that a walker can drop flyers for whatever candidate provides them. And there's a flyer that's on top of the little stack that says, this is the, vote from the top to the bottom is our recommendation as Democrats. Now, you've got to be sure that you're not offending the people that are actually looking at every candidate and making a decision, as opposed to just checking all the Democratic boxes all the way down, or the Republican boxes all the way down. So that's happening this weekend, today and tomorrow. And
Kathleen, is that just because of COVID or is that going to continue in the future? Because I thought there were all these legal issues why you couldn't combine the lit drops.
the Obama campaign did not allow it, I know. I'm not sure if it was both 08 and 12, but there was a financial issue. Now it's all okayed and it's a going concern. Yeah. Now there is a separation of the Senate and the House. Diane Mitch Bush and who's running for Senate, Hickenlooper. They're running a separate lit drop. That's called the combined campaign. So that's separate. But the local ones are all lined up there. So let's see. The signage thing, I mean, I had 200 or 400 Biden signs delivered into my yard, and 200 went to the neighboring areas, but they were gone within 3 days. We kept 200 and the rest were spread out, and they flew out, and they haven't there. And then we got a second batch of Biden signs, and those are gone as well. I don't know how many the second batch was. So you may be aware, just driving around town, that there's 6 possible signs that you can put out.
Did I lose you? Did you mute?
Just lost sound.
I punched. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, I don't know when I punched it.
Only about 10 seconds ago.
Okay. Well, the signs are pretty much out, and I doubt there's going to be much more sign need. But anyway, we're hoping to be sure that people bring all of their sign wires and signs back, because oftentimes candidates reuse them. And I have a stash in my basement. I call it my yard sign wire library. And at the beginning of this election season, I had 800 wires of different sizes in my basement. Right now, there's about 200, and there's 600 out there being reused. So we call them, started with Gwen and Julie, and theirs have been used 3 or 4 times now. So we're trying to be sure that people will bring them back to my yard, and we can get them back for the next go around. So I know that there's some volunteer coordinated efforts going on as far as the lit drops and the calling, certainly calling. Marcia Porter Norton has a major calling effort to unaffiliateds especially. But all the candidates do. They're all calling.
And how do they contact somebody?
That would be Ann Marquardt. I have her number someplace here. If you want to give you her phone number.
Would we call or would we email?
Yeah, you could email her too. So I have both. I just don't have them right at hand here.
I probably have them.
And the other person that I don't know as well, who has been doing some of the volunteer coordination, is Beverly Ellis. And see, if I check out of the Zoom for a moment, I guess
that's okay. No, I can actually, I'm going to put it in the chat, and I'm looking it up right now.
And do you have Beverly Ellis?
No, but I do have Ann.
I can grab Beverly's on paper. I'll just put that.
So Ann is 970-779-8796.
And Ann's email is Marquardt.
I think it's amarquardt@gmail.
Well, yeah, actually you have that because she's real involved with Indivisible, right?
Yes.
So I'll give Beverly Ellis real quick. I've got it here in my list of 500 people.
Or Deborah E. Ellis.
It's actually Beverly Ellis, and her number.
Oh, Beverly, sorry. Putting that in.
970-815-9413. And her email is the number 2 corners dot babe, BABE, 2 corners babe @gmail. She probably has an official Democratic email, but that she won't care.
Okay, and I'll put in Ann's here, which is markward@gmail.com. So we'll put that in.
The other thing that may or may not be needed, and I think they're still needing people to staff the office. Since there's not door walking going on, it's not quite as active as it usually is with people coming and going with their, their different paperwork of which house to stay at. What's that called? Turfs. So there's not as many people directing traffic and needed, but there has been, I'm doing a shift at 5, so I need to leave pretty soon. So that's another thing that you can call either Ann or Beverly to get connected with those shifts that they're doing 2-hour shifts, trying to keep this open.
Phone calls or?
No, the shifts at the headquarters.
Volunteer shifts. Okay.
Yeah, people with what they need. Yeah.
Yeah, and I got an email, they were still looking for people to staff voter registration at FLC and Manna and the farmers market. They have a lot of open slots there, so.
You said Humana?
Well, there's a list and they're doing it at Manna.
Manna Kitchen, I mean.
Manna Kitchen, Fort Lewis College, and the farmers market. And I got an email asking to, with a bunch of open slots, and there were quite a few still open that needed somebody to man them.
Okay. Manna Kitchen, FLC, and farmers market. Okay, I'm putting that. And so do you remember, was that from Ann and Beverly as well?
I think it starts with Ann, and she sends a form and you can kind of mark what you're interested in volunteering, and then you get emails from that.
Okay.
I'm just typing in, oops, I just did, but it came out.
That's okay. You can type another one.
I hit the wrong one. So Katie Stewart McVeigh is the one that's scheduling the headquarters time.
Oh, okay.
So I'll continue to put her contact information in the chat room.
Okay, great.
So I can't think of anything else, but I'm sure there's plenty more.
Yeah, I guess one thing I would mention, since we're mentioning Democrats, and that Diane Mitchbush is doing Zoom town halls around that I got a notice on too, that I guess you can listen in on any of those, but they haven't done our particular county yet. So I guess we're waiting to hear from them. And we'll try and send out some information on that when we know. Still no debate as far as we know, correct? Between Diane and Boebert.
Right. There's been, you might have read, Boebert either has not responded or has not agreed to anything, as far as I know at this point, as far as interviews at the media or within a forum. She hasn't for the League of Women Voters, I know.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's been a real bone of contention and difficulty, because evidently, well, especially the league cannot have just one candidate show up. That's against the league's policies. So
Okay.
that means Diane does not have the forum.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for the information. That really helped since Karen wasn't here.
Yeah.
So Kathleen's always been so active with the Democrats. So she's been really, really helpful. Thank you. Okay, so Laura?
I do need to sign off and get
That's
to my.
fine. That's fine. Thank you.
Okay,
and
thank
people
you.
will be watching this, so we're
you, Deb.
recording it. Okay.
Great to get the summary.
Thanks. Bye-bye, Kathleen.
I was making applesauce here when I was on mute, so. the fruit flies.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, better than the fly on what's his name's head.
on his head. Right. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Laura, do you want to do yours next, or do you want me to?
Sure. Mine's pretty quick. So I've just been working with Vote Forward, writing letters. And they've been doing good. They started out with a goal of writing 10 million letters, and they're now up to 12.6 with a goal of writing 15 million letters. I actually had a little party here, socially distanced on my deck for people to write. And the nice thing about it is it's really easy. The commitment is pretty as small or as big as you want to make it. I've been doing this all summer, so I have like 220 letters so far ready to go. The mail date is October 17th. And you just go into Vote Forward, so votefwd.org. I can put that in the chat.
Are you going to do that?
My chat window will come up, I will.
Or I can do it.
.org. And you can choose your campaign. So you can choose whatever state that you want to send letters to. They have some that have been closed because all the letters have been sent. I have right now sitting here waiting for me to do some letters to Florida and to Georgia. And it's a form letter. It's a pre-form letter. You can see it's probably backwards, and you personalize it. So you basically say, I'm voting this year because, and say why it's important to you to vote. You're not asking them to support a particular candidate. You're just asking them to vote. And you can choose to adopt 5 writers, 5 people at a time, or you can choose to adopt 20 people at a time. And so it's such an easy thing to do from home. I do it when my daughter was home for the summer. I would do it. We'd watch some show and sit there and just write our letters. You do have to print them on your printer. You do need to supply your own envelopes and stamps. I've had fun with that too, because they have a commemorative stamp for women's suffrage. So like my letters, when I can tell it's an obvious female name, like it's to Mary, I will write, it's important to me to vote because, many women fought so hard to give us the right to vote, and asked them, please join me in honoring their sacrifices this year by casting a vote. And then I put a little women's suffrage stamp on that. It's kind of fun. So I found a lot of people. I volunteer at the Humane Society, and there's 2 older women there who were speaking of how frustrated they were with everything. And it was just driving them crazy. And they're like, if only there was something we could do. But they don't want to go out in public. They're older, they're very careful. And I'm like, hey, you could write these letters. And they're like, we could do that from home. Absolutely. And so now they're writing letters. And they, I saw them this week. They're like, it feels so good to do something, to feel like they're doing something. And so, I don't know, I think it's just an easy thing to do. And they've had, they did a study in one state before they started this process, and they increased voter turnout in that state in 2018 by 3%. And, that can be a pretty big number if you do it countrywide. So I think it's a worthwhile thing to do. And it does, feel good to take some action. So that's my spiel. I've been loving it.
Laura, thanks. And where did you get that necklace that says vote? That is also great.
Also, do you know Jennifer Floyd?
No, yeah.
She owns Cartwheel Studios. She's also a neighbor, I guess yours and mine. This is Jennifer's work.
Oh.
You can go on her website,
on her website?
studios.com, and since you're a neighbor, she'll deliver it to you.
Jennifer Floyd?
Yeah, Cartwheel Studios.
Oh, cartwheelstudios.com.
Yeah.
Am I spelling it right? Oh, you haven't seen it yet.
Haven't seen it yet. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and that is to get a vote
Vote
necklace.
And on the other side, it says, damn it. To vote,
Oh,
damn it.
yay.
Yeah, and she delivers, I think, for free to all of Durango. So
Oh, that's
I've
great.
been wearing it. I told her I bought it about 3 weeks ago, and I said I am wearing it every day to the election. And so I did do the lit drop today, and I wore that in my vote T-shirt from
Oh,
Dutch.
that's great too. Great. Well, thank you.
You bet.
Okay, so I'm going to, since Carolyn Hunter is enjoying this gorgeous day, I'm going to just show her PowerPoint that she did on triple voting. I'm not quite as, I won't be quite as good at sharing this information. So Lora, you can jump in if there's anything you need to show. Can you, I think you're seeing it now, is that right?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so this is called Triple Your Power. And it's basically pretty simple. Call 3 of your, it could be unaffiliated, but actually it could be just friends and relatives, because at this point, the most important thing is to get people to vote. And we all did the coordinating council participated in a workshop on triple voting. So this PowerPoint, I think, comes from part of that workshop. But most effective ways to influence people. First, they're in your circle of 250 people, your closest 250 relatives and friends. Second effective way is in-person conversations, or given the pandemic, you can still be outside with your mask on and knowing the person. And third, phone calls, because caller ID does show up. So if they know you, they'll pick up the phone. Postcards, which I was gonna add to what you said, Lora. I got a postcard in the mail. I didn't get a letter, but a postcard about encouraging me to vote. And it was very personal. And I thought it was great. And then fifth, I guess, is mailing. And that's kind of probably what, in a way, what you're doing, Lora, is mailing a letter that people feel they have to open. So who to influence. Now, this particular PowerPoint talks about unaffiliated voters, you already know, or active Democrat voters who are already convinced. And do you remember this? They said Trump supporters can't be swayed, but 1/3 of Colorado voters are unaffiliated. So we're not going to waste time arguing with people and trying to change the cult, but definitely the people that haven't decided and certainly independents, aren't there? Like, isn't it a third Democrats, a third Republican, and a third independent, I think. Doug, do you know?
Sorry, what was that?
How many is it? Like a third Democrat, a third Republican, and a third independent?
I think that's roughly right.
Okay.
In fact, I think affiliates might actually be growing from that.
Okay. So this particular PowerPoint, you could work with any state. I think Carolyn's point was to really focus on people you know. And so, like, she lives in town and has lots of college kids next door. So she just, leaned over the fence, saw them out in the backyard, talked to them. My husband is a professor, and we had a former student that was over at our house, distanced on the porch with two relatives. And of course, they were very progressive. But one of the first things I said is, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I have to ask one question. Are you registered to vote? So you can say, first ask your friend if you feel comfortable with that, which way they're leaning. And if they're Republican, just say, great, talk about something else. But if they're leaning Democrat or progressive, find out if they're registered to vote, especially if they've moved recently. So I think we need to have this with us everywhere we go, because I was trying to give this to somebody and I'm like, oh, what is it? Go vote, go call. And I almost forgot. And you can help them register right at that moment. I mean, you can even look it up on your phone, which is a lot of what we do at the farmers market, so that people can get registered. Third, alert them to discover where their closest ballot drop box is. And Doug talked about that earlier, and we do have a list here, and I'll show that in a minute. And ask them when they intend to register or vote, or what their plan is. So the point is to kind of be a little bit of a nag in that, or a mentor. I'm gonna, do you mind if I help you carry out the process? If you have any questions about voting, I'm here. I can tell you who to contact, or I can give you some information. So it's easy, just 3 friends, 3 relatives, and that's what's called triple voting. So if we have 1,000 indivisible Durango members, if we all get 3 people to vote, that can be 3,000 votes. So the drop boxes, and this does not include the new one, because this is Farmers Fresh Market in Ignacio, Doug. So it doesn't have the Ute one, but it has County Administration Building, FLC Concert Hall. Is that still right?
In the parking lot of the concert hall.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's the FLC one. Okay. And then the county clerk's office, which is 679 Turner Drive, Farmers Market in Ignacio. Hopefully I'm assuming that's outside, because I've heard they don't wear masks in that market. So you want to be careful. And
the Ute one, the new one is at the Ute Cultural Museum.
Do you want to put that in the chat so people can see that? Okay. And that's it. And Laura, do you want to add anything to that? Did I explain that?
The whole idea of tripling is to, not only do you approach people, you ask them to approach 3 people.
Oh, right.
Right?
Yes.
So you continue to triple the vote on down. And the other aspect of it is to follow up, right? So you got them to register to vote, check in, hey, did you get your ballot, and, hey, did you vote? Just trying to check in and actually follow up with them. And, Doug did a great job. We have a young man who recently graduated from being homeless and started kind of a gardening business. And so we hired him to do some work. He's great, by the way, if you need any gardening. And Doug's like, hey, is he registered? I'm like, I don't know. And he didn't think he could, because he had gotten himself in some trouble and, had been detained. But, he'd been detained, paid his fines, all that good stuff. And Doug's like, I think you can register. And so we looked it up, and sure enough, he could. So he registered, and, we'll follow up with him, did you get your ballot? Did you vote?
Great.
Yeah. So, I mean, if everybody reaches out to anybody they can think of,
even one person.
Yeah. As many as you can. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Well, I don't know that we're going to have any questions because we don't have. Joanne, do you have any questions? I think that was helpful though. Can you think of anything else? Yeah, good information, and we'll hopefully,
I was glad to hear the information about voting, the votes when they're counted and so forth, because I thought probably that they could start early to get them counted, but I didn't know that for sure. So that's
yes,
good.
fortunately, we're not like, where is it, Pennsylvania? That cannot start counting on until election day, which is just crazy. The whole thing's crazy why everybody's making, they're reinventing the wheel and they're making such a big deal out of the issue of mail-in voting. And here again, I agree with what Doug said. Our secretary, what's her title? Gina.
Secretary Gina Griswold.
Gina Griswold.
Oops,
She and my understanding is Tiffany Parker for La Plata County has also been a great model for the state of Colorado. So, but I just feel like if the rest of the country would just take their lead, they're making it so much more complicated than they need to, and we've just got a great system. And when I think on MSNBC when she was interviewed and she talked about how you can go online and track your ballot, like Chuck Todd on MSNBC was just blown away. Like, really? You can do that? You just couldn't believe it. Just follow the template, people. It's not a big deal. So anyway, okay, well, I think that we actually stopped on time today, so that was perfect. And we hope that people will listen to the Zoom, and when it's cold out, maybe on Monday, and hope this information will be helpful. And I'm going to stop recording.